not been to Minnesota in probably 20 years.
Bring gas. Welcome to Flagrant Howls, a Minnesota Timberwolves lifestyle podcast.
All right, there he is. He was in the house for 2 Timberwolves games in Portland this week. If you want to call them basketball games, I don't know. There's some 4-letter words I would call those games. But Kyle Theige in the house here, Flagrant Howls. How are you, sir?
I am alive. I'm a little sleep deprived, but still a fun week. It was great. Obviously, this is like the 4th year in a row that the Wolves have randomly just had a 2-game set out in the Pacific Northwest. So a great little treat for me. I got to do back-to-back halftime shows with Alan Horton on Wolves Radio the last couple of nights, which was
I love that.
just a new career goal of mine is to just get into sports radio. But no, it was fun to be there. I told Dane this last night. I don't think I've covered a Timberwolves win since like May 10th. So I might be out on traveling and attending games. Might just start doing this from my couch. But yeah, they showed up, man. They showed up 6-4 after a tough loss to the Heat. Shoot around vibes on Tuesday. You usually have shoot around the day of a game, and then back to backs you don't. Vibes were really good. They're doing a half court challenge, and Finchy was shooting on one leg, and it was just fun. And then just really embarrassing, non-serious performances over a 28-hour span where you just got played off the court by a team that is also going through it and just looked like a way better coach team, way better, executing team. Tough couple of days here in the City of Roses.
Well, I want to give you sort of like where I'm at on this.
Okay.
And what I told the audience before the second Portland game. And I don't know, maybe you can throw all of this out after they lost back-to-back games in Portland. I do want to shout out real quick here a new partner, Bricksworth of Flagrant Howls. So Bricksworth, there's a couple locations, the OG location in Burnsville, and then Bricksworth in the North Loop. And you see on the YouTube channel here, some of the best dry rub wings and Detroit-style pizza you're going to find in the metro area. And not only is it great for pre-gaming or post-gaming, before or after a Wolves game, just steps from Target Center, but a great place to watch away games as well. Eat, drink, watch games, be merry, and try the signature Nas Reed Hazy IPA at Bricksworth as well. And not to mention the OG location in Burnsville too. They brew all their own craft beer at the Burnsville location with a full bar as well, signature cocktail. So Bricksworth in the North Loop, belly up, watch a game, or hang out before or after a Wolves game. So I told the Flagrant Howls faithful, and I told Judd and Declan a couple days ago, or I guess it would, between the 2 Portland games, everyone needs to take a deep breath, calm down. Let's go through Wolves history for a second. 3 of the best regular season teams in Wolves history started horribly slowly or mediocre. The 03-04 Wolves, 58 wins, biggest regular season in franchise history. They were 500 basically after the first month, and then they took off after a month of gelling with Sprewell Cassell. It took them a month. Excuse me. The 99-2000 Timberwolves, the first 50-win team in Timberwolves history. They started 7-13, including 8 consecutive losses to start December. And then they got it together, like end of December into January. They go on a tear. They are one of the best teams in the league from that point forward. And then the 02-03 Timberwolves, the 3rd winningest team in Timberwolves history, 51 regular season wins. They were 17-16 on January 7th. And then they start to figure it out in the weeks leading up to the All-Star break. So on one hand, I'm sitting here saying, everyone take a deep breath, calm down. And then like 8 hours later, they get beat again by this Portland team. And there's all sorts of defensive issues. And so, I don't know. I'm still in the be patient camp, and everyone needs to just take a deep breath and calm down camp. If it's still like this in like mid to late January, okay, now we can start to freak out. Am I being too lenient with this team? You were there for 2 days, so you tell me like your vibe, having been in the arena, been in the locker room.
No, I would just refine what you said of and I don't know. This is going to be just 45 minutes of you and I talking like we're on the phone, being therapeutic. But I sometimes don't always love how I get painted as a little too much of a fan or too optimistic. I don't think I'm optimistic in the sense of being like, let's preach patience, because I just think a lot of times that's what this the NBA season is way too long. Like, I don't love covering 82 games. And I think they will figure some of this stuff out. But what you also said there was like, calm down. I was calm like 48 hours ago because I was like, that Heat game, I rewatched it with Dane late at night and it was 88-80 with 4 minutes left. And let's call a spade in that one. Anthony Edwards just did a lot of boneheaded stuff. He had 6 turnovers. He took a really bad shot. Then it led to a Tyler Hero run out in a 3 and just not smart execution. And then Finch put a bow on it with just really dumb stuff too. And then you watch him against this Blazers team that has just young guys that can't shoot. And they shot in that first game, I believe, the best 3-point percentage with 20 or more attempts in 5 years. And I don't mean for Portland. I think in the NBA.
It was like 57% or something.
Yeah. And then last night on the second night of a back-to-back, there's no DeAndre Ayton. There's no Anthony Simons. There's no Robert Williams, arguably 3 of their best players on a lottery team. And they just got kind of punked by everyone. I mean, Donovan Clingan had a career high, albeit he's a rookie in 10 games, in blocks, rebounds, and points. He just outplayed the defensive player of the year. Shaedon Sharpe, I believe, had a career high in points going against, 2 foundational pieces in Ant and Jaden. So I think patience is the right answer because it's such a damn long season, man. But I also think you can be a little riled up now because it's starting to get close to the definition of insanity. Last night, obviously, first night, they don't start Mike. Nikhil, we should talk about that a little bit. But yeah, I don't know. It does at some point have to, and the players said this last night, and Phil, I'm kind of confused, so I want to throw this to you, but unprovoked last night, just asking Ant and asking Julius and asking Rudy post-game about what's going on. And they all were very open about this has nothing to do with coaching. Yeah. The coaches are giving us the right answers and telling us what to do. And we are like, yeah, we get it. And then in the game, we don't do it. Is that because the rotation's too short and guys are already kind of tired? I mean, Anthony Edwards played 40 minutes on the second night of a back-to-back against a team that's going to finish in the top 6 in the lottery. That's, can you find more minutes for the young guys? Does that even make sense? Rob Dillingham was freed last night. I thought he had 6 good minutes in the first where he had 5 potential assists. He was also a team worst -13 and had 3 turnovers. So it's frustrating. I mean, Dane and I were yelling at each other last night at 2 a.m. on the pod. Like it's frustrating because there's all these levers that probably start to need to get pulled, and fans want certain levers. They want Josh. They want less Dante. They want more Rob. But sometimes you pull those levers, Phil, and what is the science term? Like for every action, there's an equal reaction. Like last night they pulled the Rob lever and he got cooked. But it's also like, yeah, because he's 19 and he did give him some juice. So I don't know what the answers are. And I think they're going to flush him out over the next 10 to 15 games. But I think you can be preaching patience while also being pretty upset about how this has turned out so far through 12 games.
Let's go on the Rob Dillingham front and come back to I'm just going to make a note, come back to the coaches thing, because those were some interesting quotes, but we're going to put a pin in that, circle back. So on the Dillingham front, I feel like throughout the entire summer, and then the trade happens and it kind of changes the math on the rotation, but when they drafted Dillingham, from the press conference after that draft and Terrence Shannon Jr., the discussion with the Wolves publicly and with idiots like us on microphones and fans was, hey, you might have to just throw a couple young dudes in that rotation, maybe suffer a little bit while they take their lumps. But then after a couple months, those guys will be a little bit more used to NBA basketball and chemistry and everything. But you're probably going to have to short-term sacrifice and maybe cost yourself some games to get those guys some minutes, right? Well, isn't that kind of what happened last night? So the Wolves wind up losing that game by 8 points. I'm going to oversimplify this because there's a bunch of things to nitpick. But like they wind up losing that game by 8 points, but they were a -13 in the Rob Dillingham 9 minutes. So if you simplify it to that, they essentially ran Rob Dillingham out there for 9 minutes just to like see, hey, let's go, dude. You're a top 10 pick. I would argue that it was better than the -13 because he dished about 3 or 4 passes to wide open, like Naz Reid wide open in the corner. Like he did his job as a distributor 3 or 4 times, and wide open looks that this team usually knocks down did not go in. And like if Naz Reid hits a 3 in the corner and somebody else hits a wide open 3, okay, now it doesn't look as bad, and maybe they even wind up winning the game. But they kind of lost the game because they devoted 9 minutes to a young guy that I think should be devoting minutes to for the long haul here.
Right, and I think that's where, while preaching patience, my legitimate frustration is that from the end of June until the end of September, when they make the Carl trade, my whole thing is like, hey, it's okay to just suck or be 500 for the first 20 games, thinking that a rotation would start big and then be cut down as you kind of figure out who can hang and who can't hang right now. It's been the opposite of that in terms of like a rotation, but it's the same result, right? Like I was just preaching for 4 months. It's okay to take a half step back if in February or March it allows you to take 1.5 steps forward. Mm-hmm. They've done the opposite of that, and they're still taking a half step back. They're a 500 basketball team that has, a couple solid wins, but a couple really bad losses already. So I don't know, but I think this rotation thing, we've kind of been doing it now every week. I think everyone is frustrated, but I have not yet. And again, this one counts for me because I was there last night. I haven't seen anyone have an actual solution that could work, right? Like a lot of concepts of a plan, but Rob Dillingham got to play last night, and he did. I tallied it was 5 passes that actually led to dudes who had open shots of like 6 feet, like they were wide open. He was really getting the ball moving. But if you go watch the 3-minute stint he played in the second half, he was attacked on defense, which is just going to happen because of his stature. But also, if you threw Rob into last year's defense, it wouldn't have been as big of a deal because you have all these other guys playing at a high level. Ant's not playing at a high level defensively. Jaden's not playing at a high level defensively. And then Rob, and this was the thing that sucked, he was not looking to score. And we saw that in the summer league where it's like he could really turn his brain of like these first couple games, we just want you to facilitate. And he did a good job, like 13-1 turnover ratio, assist to turnover ratio in the first games, but he didn't score. And then the last game, summer league, he just scored, didn't care about. So he needs to find a better balance of that because I think he can bring the ball up. The Wolves guards are getting pressured like crazy in the backcourt now. I think teams have discovered, hey, you know what? They don't have a lot of dudes that can dribble again. Rob can dribble, but he also needs to be aggressive, and he has no ability to finish at the rim right now because he is small and he hasn't learned some of the nuances that come with that, but he still has a really good stroke and a really good jumper. And between like him and DiVincenzo, they just got to get into Phil. They shot 7 for 39 last night.
So that's another thing I want to bring up is that I know, you look and you watch that game and you're banging your head against the wall, and then toward the end of the game, they're like just running headlong into Donovan Clingan, who you mentioned already, with 8 blocks. Like, okay, you guys, stop challenging him. But again, oversimplification, Phil here. This team, like you said, was 7 of 39 from 3-point range last night. A lot of open looks that they're missing. When you decide as an organization, you're gonna go from sort of bottom of the pack in the NBA 3-point attempts to trying to chuck 40 plus 3-pointers a game and be near the top of the league in volume, you're going to have nights where you shoot 17%. Like it's going to happen. It happens to the Celtics. It's going to happen. So once again, I am oversimplifying. There are other problems here that need to be talked about. Sloppiness, lack of ball handling, the rebounding has been a problem, Jaden McDaniels. But if this team, they shot 39 threes, if they hit the percentage average, like the make rate, 14 out of 39, 15 out of 39 would have been like in line with their season average. So if they make an extra 7 threes per their season average, now we're talking about a blowout win. So how much of the feeling of that loss is due to just, well, they missed 7 extra threes compared to their season average, and if you give them 21 extra points, they actually wind up winning this game like 120 to 106, and some of the other little problems are just kicked down the road, and we feel much better about it.
Yeah, and kick down the road is the best way to say that, because I think math in just a weird, like I said, 28 hours in Portland of shooting regression for one team, and then again, the Blazers came into Tuesday's game, the first night of that back-to-back, 29th in the league in 3-point percentage. Yeah. And then they just historically shot 57%. So there was a lot of just weird shooting variance in a 2-game sample size. But to your point, and I think this has kind of come up now a lot this season, if they did win those 2 games and they just kind of eked them out and they figured it out in the last couple of minutes and they're 8-4, I don't know how much better people would really feel. Even though it's a wins and losses business, like there are some real issues there. My stance on the patience thing is that I think there's so many issues that are like mild temperature wise that if you can just correct maybe one thing, and last night maybe it was, does it work to have Nikhil start and then when Mike is back playing, like letting him come off the bench and play 22 minutes tonight and run the second unit? Like, is it we need to clean up 30 issues, or if we clean up this one issue, the other 29 will kind of like, I don't know, this just came to my mind, but like my garage door is all messed up and it started like tripping the power breaker. Like, again, look at me talking about houses and all I know, but like a bunch of stuff just all of a sudden went wrong. And all they had to do was like tighten the chain, which again, I probably could have done that, but I'm an idiot. And then like all this stuff just kind of like naturally fixed itself. Yeah. I think that's a little bit here, but there are so many small issues that it's like, which one, cutting wires, which one is the wire we cut that everything else will kind of fall into place. That's how I think this is going to happen. But Finch and those guys they're throwing stuff at the wall right now and it's not working. So you go.
People are kind of, I guess, again, I just sound like such a homer here in the first 17 minutes of this podcast. People are talking about this team as if they are 2-8 right now, or like 3-9. And because there's a couple teams right now in the NBA. I mean, the Sixers were without Joel Embiid. Now that they have him, he looks like he can like barely get up and down the court. There's like 3 or 4 teams. By the way, the Knicks are under 500. The Knicks are, Karl Anthony Towns is putting up crazy numbers, but the Knicks are under 500. Yeah. And so on, like they're 6-6. They've bought them. If they were in a hole like 3-9, full on panic for me in a loaded Western Conference. So that's one thing that I just want to point out, that they are 6-6. It's 3 terrible losses, but they are 6-6. They still have one of the best players in the world in Anthony Edwards. I think there's smart people in the room who are going to figure this out. But my biggest, aside from missing a bunch of threes, my biggest annoyance with this team is their sloppiness. Mm-hmm. And some of that, to your garage door chain metaphor, some of that, I don't know what the exact fix is behind Mike Conley, because like DiVincenzo's a ball handler, Nikhil is a ball handler, and Anthony Edwards is, but they're not like super reliable Mike Conley, protect the ball at all costs ball handlers. Dude, there was a play last night where Nickeil Alexander-Walker like rifles an unorganized pass toward the rim. I can't remember if he was throwing it to Julius Randle. It like rifles off the backboard, and then Blazers get it going the other way, and Nikhil like puts his hands on his head like, what am I doing? I feel like they are just throwing away possessions or odd man rushes in transition 10 times a game with sloppy ball handling, careless passing. Sometimes they're trying to go, instead of odd man rush, they're trying to go like 1-on-4 into the teeth of the defense. And if you this is where like Jordan McLaughlin sometimes would come in and he would fix this problem. Like, this, not that he was the be all end all. Kyle Anderson was reliable as sort of a point forward. So I don't know who is reliable when Mike Conley is not handling the basketball. That's the biggest question, I think, in terms of my annoyances. Because Nikhil's turned the ball over too much. DiVincenzo, by the way, like hasn't hit a 3 all season, in addition to being kind of sloppy with the basketball. But that, like, and Anthony Edwards, careless. They turned the ball over 20 plus times in 3 straight games, and they reduced it last night to 13, but there were still stretches where you're like, what are you guys? You're throwing away possessions. That's what's driving me the most nuts about this team.
And all of those turnovers happened last night in the last 3 quarters. Because they were turnover free in the first quarter. Right. They're up 33-23. And it's like, hey, this kind of looks like what I'm used to. I just canceled my 1 o'clock. So because this could go all day, you and I now. Because you opened up another can of worms. I still want to go back to your pin. And I also am going to drop something on you really quick that we did not discuss before. But this is your favorite Timberwolves lifestyle podcast. And if you are a fan of this team or of any team or any sport, and you invest time and energy or financial dollars or whatever, I think you kind of have the right, within some bumpers, don't like start calling players wives or whatever, but I think you have the right to just get really mad. Like that's kind of what makes a lot of this fun, and fan is short for fanatic. But me and you, and I'm speaking for you now, I'm done with like they lose a game in the middle of November and let's keep talking about the Carl trade. I'm so over that. Like we mourned. And
it was a big topic on Wolves Twitter last night because
yeah,
there's in a loss, but Carl's going off for like ridiculous numbers.
And you know what? Maybe the trade was dumb, and maybe Tim Connolly ruined the franchise. I remember hearing that when they traded for Gobert, right? Like this guy came in and he blew up all the good vibes of Pat Bev. Pat Bev's in Israel, I think. Like Vando hasn't played in like 18 months. Yeah. Okay. And those guys are obviously not even 1/100th of the player that Karl-Anthony Towns is. But yeah, Dad, are you listening to this? When you texted me last night that Carl had 46, what did I text you back? Oh, they lost to the Bulls and they're 5-6.
Well, Kyle going at his family right now.
It's just like, come on, man. Like, yes, this Carl stuff is kind of a bummer and maybe it takes people longer to grieve. Carl missed half the first year of the Rudy experiment. Okay. Carl missed 20 some games last year when they were still the best defense in the league. So I don't want to hear that the guy that oftentimes Carl was so much better defensively last year. It was awesome, but he was still the 4th or 5th best defender in the starting lineup. So Ant and Jaden are on massive pay raises right now. Yes, the guy, Jaden McDaniels, who I really enjoy watching, they just have to play harder. Nickeil Alexander-Walker makes in a season what Ant makes in a month, and he's the guy out there, yes, throwing chest passes to the rim, but he's at least kind of leaving it all out there, and that's why he was promoted to starter in Mike's absence. So yeah. I don't know. It's if that's how you want to constantly be like, oh my God, the girl in high school who was really into me and I didn't think about, like, now she's like a celebrity, and what if, like, I'm over it, man. Like, Carl lives in New York now and he's on a team that has a worse record than the Wolves, and maybe they figure it out and he's, according to some stats, giving up 93% at the rim or whatever. Like, I hope Carl can just prove everyone wrong, and he's hooping right now. Absolutely hooping for a team that, 46 against the Bulls, man. I remember seeing 62 against the Hornets. Two teams that haven't figured it out yet, and two teams that are trying to navigate a massive trade. So, end rant. That rant was sponsored by Declan Goff, who went off today about something else. But I want to just impromptu this quick. I know Ross we want to do random mole for the week, but my biggest takeaway after 48 hours, if you want to know what I learned being in the locker room and stuff, let's just do a quick, and we can either do what you think it is, Phil, or what you think it should be, and maybe what it should be will be more fun. I think it's time again to do a leadership power rankings.
Oh, okay. Okay. Hold on. I want to respond to one thing you said.
Okay.
Here's what I do. I want to respond to one thing. You brought up the cat thing, and I want to
cancel my 2 o'clock too now. Okay.
And then, yeah, are you? You're good. Are you good for a little bit?
Right? I'm good until Treasure Island tomorrow night.
Okay. And and we'll get to the leadership power rankings. I'm just going to make a note here, and then we'll get to a random Wolf of the Week. People are talking about the defense and how the Wolves are a sieve and they are atrocious defensively. Everything has to be taken within the context of the league. So you can't just watch your team in a vacuum and conclude that they are terrible defensively without comparing to the context of the league. It's like, in the NFL, every fan base thinks they have a garbage offensive line. And then when you zoom out and watch all the other teams, like, oh, yeah, actually, even the best offensive lines, quote unquote, are giving up pressures on 1 out of every 4 pass plays because, the opposing defense has a bunch of 260-pound machine edge rushers who are paid to go get after quarterback. Did you know that the Wolves, after the first 12 games of the season, are 8th in defensive net rating?
I would have thought they were 80th, but okay.
They're 8th in defensive net rating. Now, are they as locked down as they were last year? No. But when they made that trade, when they made the cat trade, and even without that trade, it's really hard to just be the number 1 defense multiple years in a row. The energy and just everything that goes into being the number 1 defense, doing it multiple years in a row is really hard for a lot of reasons, right? So every single one of us, I think, once they made that trade, agreed they're probably not going to be the best defensive team in the NBA anymore. They'll still be a good defensive team, but the trade-off here is maybe take a step back defensively. And with the additions of Julius Randle, Dante DiVincenzo, interchangeability of parts, maybe a little Dillingham over here, Anthony Edwards taking a step, that you're going to make a jump offensively. And overall, even though you're not going to have the best defense in the league, overall, it's going to be a net positive. Well, okay. So they've gone from first down to 8th in defensive net rating. Now I'm looking at the offense and saying, I actually think the offense is the bigger problem here. And some of it's easily identifiable. Dante DiVincenzo, my man, you got to make a 3-pointer at some point. Like he was 1 for 10 last night. If they remain 8th to 10th in defensive net rating, which is not going to be super locked down like it was last year, and Dante DiVincenzo starts hitting some shots, and you get some semblance of the old Mike Conley back, boom, I'll take it. Because now you're going to be. By the way, they were 17th in offensive net rating last year. They're 12th right now, despite DiVincenzo doing nothing so far and Mike Conley being a shell of himself. I worry about the age cliff. But I just want to point that out about the defense. That part of this agreement was they're not going to be the best defense anymore, but they're still going to be pretty good. And that's exactly, through 12 games, big picture, what they've been.
And that was the big takeaway of whether it was last night Ant talking about regaining that chip on their shoulder, or Finch saying in the first game of the back-to-back that like these next 10 games are about finding our identity. Everyone collectively said, and Naz Reid kind of led this charge, that our identity at some point again has to be defense, because the cliche defense wins championships. I believe that, but as we put pins in multiple things, I'm just going to put a pin in that because I wonder if this team's best chance would be to just be a little more offensive centric, and again, not play their, hey, guess what? This sucks. I'm sorry, but they might just never be as good defensively as they were last year for the rest of your life. Even if you're listening,
probably
to this
not.
And you're 6 years old, they might just never do it again. But they were essentially wiped off the floor by the Dallas Mavericks in the Western Conference Finals because the defense had kind of been solved and they couldn't do anything offensively. Right. And by the way, just like worth noting, despite like, should you panic? Should you freak out? Should you be calm? The two teams in the Western Conference Finals last year are both outside the play-in tournament right now.
Right.
So I think that was the best thing you said, is that sometimes if you are a Minnesota Timberwolves fan, or like hell, if you're a Vikings fan or whatever, the best medicine or the best way to kind of get a better picture of it is to not watch the next game and go watch Mavs Warriors. Like just go watch two other teams that's like, oh my God, they're kind of going through it. Like go watch the Knicks, who, if you want to talk about tight rotations, they just play 7 guys. And Tibbs is just like, I guess we'll see if Carl and Brunson can play 44 minutes a night from now until Memorial Day. So yeah, it's a frustrating time. There are not a lot of levers that have been pulled so far that have worked. I think Mike Conley slept better than anyone last night in Sacramento because he was like, by the way, ran into Mike at the employee store, and he's one of the nicest guys in the world. But he's not the problem, is kind of my thing. Like they just got to have, and this is a good segue here, they just have to fill leaders. And I don't know if they can be veterans. Like Pat Bev led by both what he said and a little less how he played. Kyle Anderson was a big locker room guy, but also was able to get on the court. I think Joe Ingles brings a lot of kind of, just chillness to the locker room, cracking jokes after losses, just to try to break up the mood a little bit. But again, who do you think right now is atop of the actual leadership power rankings, or who do you think should be at the top? Because I have different answers for those two things.
So it's when you frame it that way,
yeah,
it helps to paint a picture of why things are a little bit in flux with this team right now. Because Kyle Anderson was very much an on-court, off-court leader. Mike Conley very much was on-court, off-court leader last year. Again, we're not behind the curtain all the time, so it's hard to fully tell. Conley's going through it with his own game and his own health. I think
precisely. Yep.
Judd brought up this point a couple days ago, and it's spot on. As an athlete, it's harder to be the same leader that you've been throughout your career as your own performance starts to dip. Like you're naturally not going to have the same credibility, or maybe even like the same initiative to be that guy. And now there's moments where Conley definitely is still pulling guys aside. I'm not saying he's a lesser leader, but I don't know that he's like the guy that everyone is, certainly not on the court. He's not, because this is one of the worst years of his career so far. So to me, Anthony Edwards is the leader, but he's also still really young and kind of immature. He's growing. He's clearly the best version of himself to this point in his career, but he's still like 3 years away still from being a fully realized version of Anthony Edwards. So it kind of feels to me like leadership and on the court, the entire organization is looking at Ant to be that guy, and he wants to be that guy, but he's still not 100% there yet. That's my read on it.
I'll sum it up pretty short and sweet. I think the leadership power rankings as it currently stands today with just players is some combination 1, 2, and 3 of Mike Conley, Rudy Gobert, and Joe Ingles.
Okay.
And the problem is that all 3 of those guys, including Rudy Gobert last night, 4-time defensive player of the year, a guy who just doesn't let them lose a lot of those silly games, was flat out outplayed by a guy who's 20 years old and very raw. Donovan Clingan crushed Rudy Gobert last night on all aspects of basketball. So that's who I think it is. But, and you made a really good point just now, I don't know how effective the message is sometimes if the messenger isn't performing at the level that you expect. Last year, and again, they still super respect Rudy, and everyone listens to Mike when he speaks. But I kind of remember last year, the Kyle Anderson stuff, when stuff went wrong, like lazy backdoor cut and they get scored on, he would just demand the ball and be like, I'm bringing this up, listen to me. And then he would, especially post trade deadline, when he started to kind of click again, he would deliver. So maybe this is all just, I was overreacting last night to Dane being like, DiVincenzo, these minutes are killing us. He's like, dude, a week ago, you said he was one of the best bench players ever.
He will be, but it's rough right now.
So that's who I think is at the top of it right now. But I've come away with this a little more, and I'm with you. I love talking about how old guys are and how young they are. The top 3 of the leadership power rankings by Christmas needs to be a trio of Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels, and Naz Reid. Like, I don't know. Like, Naz Reid is the longest tenured Wolf here now. He's been here for 6 years, been in the league for like 6 years. Like, Ant, this is year 5. You've played in the Olympics. You've had a movie. You've had shoes. Like, you've been all NBA. I don't want to downplay the age stuff, but I also want to upplay the fact of when I talk about a guy being the face of the franchise, it's not that he gets the mural inside Target Center. It's that he's the quarterback of the NBA where when you win, you get all the praise. And when you lose, it's probably going to be your fault, rightfully or wrongfully. And for him to say last night that, like, hey, that team over there in the other locker room is a good team. No, they're not. I live out here. I'm friends with people that cover the Blazers. They're not a good team. They lost by 60 points combined last Friday and Sunday. So there does need to be a little bit of an internal awakening. And again, this is not to pass the buck on like Finch and Micah and Pablo. Like, they lost you a game on Sunday and they pretty much copped to it. But leadership power rankings moving forward, out with the old and in with the new. Like, they need to have a real awakening in that locker room of don't just say the right things after the games, and they always do that. Kind of deliver the right things during the game.
When Anthony Edwards said, back to the coaching thing from like 20 minutes ago.
Oh, yeah.
When he said in the locker room, this is not on the coaches. The coaches, Finchy, are giving us the answers. They're telling us how to win the game. They're mapping out how to win the game, and we're not effing doing it. What's your power ranking there for who he's talking about? Is he talking about himself? He's thinking of someone when he says that. He's purposefully shielding Finch because he thinks the players, starting with XYZ, are going rogue from what the coaching staff is asking. I thought that was really interesting.
I thought it was too. I didn't dissect it in the moment, but I also remember him also kind of saying this whole idea that like we have all these new faces. No, we don't. It's Julius and Dante. Like, this is still 85% of the rotation and the roster that we had last year. So I don't know. He did, when we asked him the first question of like what went wrong, he talked about, he like asked for a stat sheet from someone. He's like, how many points in the paint did they have? So I don't know if that was like, I'm not getting a lot of back protection from the bigs or whatever, But it's like, I don't know, man. I watched Shaedon Sharpe just cruise by I-5, you and Jaden and sometimes
By the way,
Nikhil.
you all laughed when old Macadac 2 years ago said, trade Cat to the Blazers. Make sure Shaedon Sharpe becomes a Timberwolf in that trade. Shaedon Sharpe can play, man. That dude is going to be a stud.
And you know what's funny about that is that he cooked last night and had a career high, and he looked horrendous last weekend. So everyone had a career high. I mean, the Wolves' big three of Nas, Jaden, and Ant essentially got outplayed by the Blazers' young big three of Sharpe. And I mean, Scoot Henderson's stock was like pennies last Friday, and now it's a premium. And then Donovan Clingan was just the best big for 2 straight nights. So it's therapeutic to let this out. Again, I know people are upset because last year was so fun, and not only were the vibes great, but they were successful and they had players that you liked cheering for. I get all of that. I just see no value in trying to solve the riddles now of a team that has real issues, like many other teams in the league, by being like, well, remember last season. Like, that's not going to do anything. It's not going to do anything in your life. It's not going to do anything for this team. They need to figure it out. And to your point, January 1st comes around and if they're still playing 500 basketball and they lose by 20 on Christmas, then I think bigger changes will be made. But for now, it's all internal. And I don't just mean like in the locker room. Some of it's like in your brains. Like, you got to come ready to play. And they did not come ready to play in the first night. And then it was too late last night to try to come back.
One more thought, and then we'll get to the random Wolf of the week. And just Dante DiVincenzo, who I still stand for. All right. I am a Dante DiVincenzo stan. But he is one of the last 2 seasons, one of the higher volume 3-point shooters in the entire league. Like top 20, top 12 to 20 in terms of attempts per game. And the last 2 seasons, he shot 40% on his attempts. And this year he's shooting 30% so far on high volume and 34% from the field. So again, like all these little things you see, there's like maybe 20 little micro things that need to be fixed here and there. If that dude starts shooting 40% on high volume, a lot of things look better and the win-loss record looks better. But so this is his 7th year in the NBA. And if you take out like the first couple of years, he didn't really become a sniper shooter until his 3rd year in the league with Milwaukee. So let's just take like the 5 most recent years. There was the one weird year in 2021-22 when I think he got traded from Milwaukee to, was it Sacramento? Yeah, Sacramento. And he played in 42 games that year. He was coming off the injury, if I'm not mistaken. And he shot 35% from the field and 33% from 3. Like, he just couldn't make a shot all year. And maybe that was just coming back from injury, whatever. But he did have pretty much a season-long shooting slump. Some people brought up, I saw on Wolves Twitter last night, is this like the Mike Miller situation from 15 years ago? The Mike Miller situation was different because Mike Miller just chose to not shoot threes with the Wolves. It's like, he's wide open. Why is he not shooting threes? Is he protesting something? But man, if Dante DiVincenzo snaps out of it and starts making threes, all right, we're probably not complaining for 40 minutes on a podcast about the entire team.
And that might be some of it. Like I said, I still think it's lazy, and I do this to just paint this broad brush of like, hey, just make some more shots.
Agreed.
And that's not, I don't think what you're saying, but like Ant sometimes does that as like, especially in the first game against Blazers, like, yeah, they hit all the shots and we didn't hit any shots. It's like, well, a lot of those shots for Portland were wide open. But with Dante, if you wanted to like really X's and O's it for 30 seconds of like, what do you want to see moving forward? I can't imagine Mike's going to be demoted to the bench on like tomorrow night, Friday against the Kings. I would imagine he gets his starting spot back. That's a big thing for me because, again, he is atop the leadership power rankings and they need a point guard out there. But if it ever does come to like Nikhil is going to be promoted for the rest of the season to start alongside Ant, and then Mike's going to run the second unit, I actually would like to see Dante like facilitate a little less and just really try to, Finch got Malik Beasley, like kept him in the league by just some of the sets he ran for him when he was here. I kind of want to see Dante do that. And again, he's shooting cold, so it's tougher, but I just want to see them use him as like this off the bench, 9 threes a game, just let it rip. Because yeah, he's shooting 30% from 3 this year. But if he was shooting what he shot last year, which was a little high, but if you're shooting 40%, they might be 8-4 just by that thing alone. So
yeah,
we're mad. It's crazy. We're frustrated. The world's
Our pets'
going,
heads are falling off.
We're all moving to blue sky, but I do have to remind myself that there are still 70 of these things coming up. And like you said, right at the top of this thing, some of the best years in Timberwolves franchise history have come with starts like this.
Yeah. Well, Nicolay Law can't help with breaking 3-point shots, but they can help if you or a loved one gets injured, where ordinary life can come to a stop and things can get complicated. And that's where Nicolay Law comes in. Russell Nicolay and his locally based team are just your normal everyday folks that happen to have law degrees to help you get the compensation you deserve after an accident. So if you or a loved one have been injured, get Minnesota's local award-winning injury lawyers. Get Nicolay, nicolaylaw.com, or give them a call at 1-855-NICOLAY. Also, we are giving away right now on the SKOR North app a 75-inch Roku Pro Series 4K TV that automatically adjusts color and sharpness for your shows, sporting events, movies, whatever it is. Great for basketball season. 75-inch Roku Pro Series 4K TV available to win on the SKOR North app in the listener rewards section. Let's bring our executive producer of Random Wolf of the Week in here, Ross Brendel. What's going on, Roscoe?
What a great title. Executive producer of Random Wolf of the Week.
You are the
that.
Senior vice president of Random Wolf of the Week.
See, now I like that better. It's getting better. Good work. Kyle, do you approve of this?
I ran out of note cards, so I'm just using check blanks to write my notes. So I kind of zoned out for that second. But anytime you get promoted, anytime we can promote you, I think you should be running the company soon. So
the Chief Random Wolf of the Week officer. How about we go C-level for Roscoe?
I want to know the last check that you wrote. I don't need to know the amount, but I would like to know the last check that you wrote.
Oh, I don't want to kill this pod by just being silent. So I'm going to think about that and respond next week. But it was something random. And I was just like, here's just a fun thing. Like, let's get political for a sec. I just remember taking a personal finance class in high school.
Yes.
And this was half my life ago. But they should do that more. Like, I didn't probably need to know how to essentially fillet a small pig or whatever that is when you cut them all open. Like, maybe teach me how to like open up a credit card or like a bank statement. But I did learn how to write checks. And shout out to Mr. Ball at Red River High School.
Mr. Ball. Yeah.
I did have to write one. But yeah, anytime Ross can just run the company, or the more titles, the better. Like, I'll hop on LinkedIn, Ross, and people have these titles that are like 9
That's great.
syllables long. And you know how much we love syllables on this podcast.
And then you realize... syllable. And then you realize that they work like only 4 hours a week for that title. That's always the crazy
Remote
part.
from Taiwan.
Very quickly, checks always crack me up because every time you think, oh boy, I can probably get rid of these or I don't need to order more, it happens just enough on a yearly basis where you need one. Or I'm also the cheap guy that when you go to the DMV and they're like, it's $51 if you use a check, or it's $57.42 if you use your credit card. Fine, I'll give you a check.
Yeah, the only checks I've written in the last like 6 years are the old fantasy baseball league that I was in for like 20 years. And I'm pretty sure like the commissioner and whoever was like keeping the money just didn't have Venmo or PayPal. It's just,
yes.
I don't do any of that stuff. Just write me a check. So I had a checkbook. And if you looked at the last like 20 entries, it was just fantasy. Yeah.
And then they got the check and didn't even comprehend or understand what to do with it. Oh, what do I do with this thing?
I know, my dad would have to not hang out with me one night a month, or like, I was like, hey, you want to go shoot hoops in the driveway, Dad? He's like, no, I have to balance my checkbook.
Yeah.
And now it's like, I'm talking to my dad about Bitcoin. He's like, what is going on? So generations.
So Random Wolf of the Week here. Ross is going to lead us. We reset the standings for year 2. Kyle has a 2-0 lead with Kevin Garnett and Reggie Jordan. All time, Kyle has 25 wins to my 12. He dominates this, but I'm looking to spark a comeback here in season 2. So Ross will throw out a series of clues. We get up to 3 incorrect guesses each. If one of us hits a third strike, the other one wins automatically. No Googling. We do get a heat check guess off the top as well.
Also, Phil, I still believe in you. It only takes one Random Wolf of the Week to turn things around.
To get a run going. That's right.
Yeah. Here we go. This Random Wolf of the Week, boys, shocker, was a first-round draft pick in the NBA. First-round draft pick. So now do your math on your heat checks. How many Wolves were first-round draft picks? And give me a name.
Chauncey Billups.
Chauncey Billups. No.
It's a good one.
You He does own the Wolves currently, though.
Danielle Marshall.
Oh, I like these guesses today. Neither is correct, but I like that you guys went a little bit old school with this one. This random Wolf of the Week averaged 20.4 points per game in his senior year of college basketball. 20.4 points per game his senior year in college.
I don't want to derail the pod, but I was just thinking, I brought up Chauncey because he coaches the Blazers, and pregame, Phil, you go listen to each coach speak, and Finch is always so tight-lipped. So last night, it's like, hey, no Mike Conley tonight. Who are you going to start? And I already knew it was Nikhil, but he's like, TBD. And then you go to Chauncey Billups' thing, and he'll tell you his social security number. He'll say, yeah, Donovan Clingan had chicken and rice today for lunch. Isn't that weird? It's like, oh my God, two different perspectives. Anyway.
This random Wolf of the Week, Kyle, was a 2-time first All Big Ten player. 2-time first All Big Ten player.
Robbie Hummel.
Second round pick.
Is that a guess?
Yes.
It's incorrect, Kyle.
Was he a second?
He was a second round pick, wasn't
I
he?
thought he was a late first. Okay, that's on me.
Look at Phil just chiming in there. Second round pick, Kyle.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Gee, he was not in the back of the first round. He was in the back of the second round. The 58.
Well, it's because he had like 4 torn ACLs in college, right?
If you look hard, you can see bits and pieces of his ACL still on the floor at Williams Arena.
Yeah.
Didn't he? I think we've talked about this on this pod, but didn't he tear those in back-to-back years at Williams Arena?
He definitely tore at least one in Williams Arena.
I'm almost positive he did.
That's not as painful as watching them lose to North Texas last night. But Ross, let's not talk Gophers basketball right now.
I didn't watch, Kyle. I listened.
Oh my God, that's even worse. Quite frankly,
It is.
all due respect to Mike Grimm. Does Mike Grimm still call those games?
Yeah, Grimmer's really good, by the way. I think we take him for granted. He's great at football, and he's really good at basketball. This random Wolf of the Week, gentlemen, wore number 45 in the National Basketball Association. Wore number 45. He was a first All Big Ten player twice, 20.4 points per game in college, first round draft pick. This random Wolf of the Week played in 60 career NBA playoff games.
Whoa.
A playoff veteran.
Probably not for the Wolves then.
Well,
that was mean, but it's accurate.
He could have had a run in there.
This random Wolf of the Week played for 4 different NBA franchises.
Number 45, huh? Number 45.
And if you'd like to know those 4 teams, I can tell you, he played for the Bucks, the Wolves, the Hawks, and the Kings. Bucks, Wolves, Hawks, and Kings, which does have me second guessing that he actually played in 60 career playoff games, so we should double check that at the end.
The Bucks, Wolves, Hawks, and Kings. Okay, we know the era he played in then, I think. For all those, there's.
Speak for yourself.
I mean, the Hawks are not. Let's see here.
Phil, you're stringing some things together, and I think I'm going to help you a bit more with this next one. This random Wolf of the Week started 63 games in 1984/1985. That was a career high. Now, I love that Kyle is visibly frustrated, claims he's out. He has also told us that probably 12 times and still gotten the random Wolf of the Week.
No chance.
Okay, this is not the era that I did not think. So he did not play playoff games many with the Wolves then.
Well, here's your next one.
So the Hawks.
Yeah, what?
This random Wolf of the Week last played during the 1993-1994 season.
Oh, man.
Oh, quick shout out, by the way. Somebody listening to this knew the answer from the get-go because this was a recommendation from our Purple Daily watch party and live vent line this past Sunday at Park Tavern.
I love that.
Is it...
Would you like another clue?
Is it Randy Brewer?
It is Randy Brewer.
Yes!
Well done. Well done. I didn't even get to
back.
the easier clues. Well done, Phil. I'm proud of you. Randy Brewer, one of 7 Gophers to play for the Minnesota Timberwolves.
Did you wear your Gophers fitted sweatshirt as an embedded clue, or is this a coincidence?
No, it's a mild coincidence because I am attending Gopher hockey in Bemidji State tonight with the big boss. So I put on a University of Minnesota hoodie for that.
Wow.
Love me, Mariucci. Don't get me started on Ben's squad. I think North Texas actually might be a decent team this year. They're actually a pretty good program. They've won the NIT, beat Purdue in the NCAA tournament. You cannot lose to them, though, at home. You just
They
can't.
had 14 points at halftime.
Yes,
the Gophers.
14.
The Gophers had 14 points.
14, and North Texas only had 23, so it's not like they were blowing you out. Hey, let's talk Rutgers and Gophers. Let's do that now.
I don't know if this counts in the standings, but a little bonus point for only Phil and Phil only. Phil, who was Randy Brewer's teammate during his time with the Gophers?
Like his main teammate?
Teammate.
Jim Pete, right?
Yeah, Jim Peterson. They both played. Randy Brewer was drafted in 1983 with the 18th overall pick by the Milwaukee Bucks.
And was Flip on those teams? Or was Flip more like late 70s? Let's look that up.
How, and I don't want to bring up any sore spots for Jim Pete, who we know listens. How did that team lose games? 2 7-footers on the same team?
I'm literally going to text him
keep
after
in
this.
mind,
Yeah.
dude, college basketball, everyone stayed 4 years. So
Yes, fair point.
Indiana, all these teams had just monster rosters for the entire decade.
Jim
Flip
Pete
was 73 to 77. He was a little older.
Okay. Tell Jim Pete that Ross said he doesn't understand how you guys ever lost any games with 2 7-footers.
We'll get right on that. Yeah. There he is. Our
Good stuff, boys. Well done,
our
Phil.
Senior Vice President and Chief Random Wolf of the Week Officer, Ross Brendel. He's Kyle Theige. This is your favorite Timberwolves lifestyle podcast.